Happy Monday morning, party people. Still over here fighting allergies, but I'm driving around by myself for work this morning and had some thoughts on my brain that I felt would be beneficial to share. Somebody probably needs to hear it. I don't know who, but somebody. Let me just preface this with, if you want the results, you have to put the work in, right? I spent so many years trying to figure my stuff out, which we all do. We all have to go through something, right? It's part of our character development, if you will. Telling myself, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't consistent, and then I beat myself up for not being consistent, because when you're not consistent, you usually don't get the results that you want, and right? So I finally, about a month ago, decided I need a coach, right, for the horse stuff that I want to do. I was like, I'm obviously not creating the results I want on my own. I need to work with somebody who knows more than I do that can help me get where I want. Even if it's just pushing me in the right direction. Even if it's just telling me, like, hey, you suck, you need to practice, right? It's somebody to hold me accountable. So I did that. I started taking lessons about a month ago. Feeling a lot better about what I'm doing with the horse that I am putting consistent time into. And we had our first horse show in 2 years over the weekend, and I was very pleased with how we did. My horse tried really hard for me. I was able to show up as a better leader, I guess is the right word for it, for my horse. And we placed top 5 in 3 of the 5 classes we entered. Not bad for not doing much for the last 2 years. The other part of my weekend, I visited the Carson James Clinic out here in Ione and got to talk to him and his wife, and we kind of had a little chit chat about these people coming to clinics and then they don't go home and practice what they learned for the rest of the year until the next one rolls around. And it's like, you do a thing for 3 days out of 365 days, but you don't practice it, how do you expect to get better? It just makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, we had the conversation of, I know how to train a horse, right? Maybe not finish one, but I know how to get one broke under saddle and gentle enough that grandma could get on and go ride around, right? That's not what I do for a living. However, it's one of those things, like, I've prioritized my education. I figured out what it was that I wanted to do, what I enjoyed doing, and I figured out how to do it to the best of my ability, and it's one of those things that you never stop learning. So 2 years ago, I went to a Buck Brademan clinic, figured out some better ways to do horsemanship stuff, got a subscription to an online deal with a bunch of trainers that post videos and work through problems with their horses, and I make it a point at least once a month or so to kind of like, what's that next thing I can work on? What's that next thing I can practice on? What tools can I build in my toolbox? And so it's just one of those things that, especially horse owners, we're so guilty of this, right? We don't make time for it, and we're like, oh, if I had time and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Guess what, Buttercup? You make time for what you decide is important. It's as simple as that. And nobody wants to hear it. So, you make time for what's important to you. If you want to build a better relationship with your horse, if you want to, perfect example, like, I don't do a whole lot of the firearms competition stuff like Bradley does, right? But he practices, and he puts the time in, he puts the reps in. I went to a competition one time. Guess how I placed? I got last in my division. And why would I expect anything better than that? Because I don't practice as much as he does. I just don't. And them's the facts. You get the results you want when you put the time in. And it really helps having a coach. I know I'm getting a little off on a tangent here, but if you're not getting where you want and you're putting the time in, you probably need a little bit of help from somewhere, right? Whether it's I need to work on my communication skills, or I need to work on my firearms training, or I need to work on, figuring out how to finish a ranch riding horse. Like, whatever that is, if you feel like you're not putting the time in, one, just start. Just find a place to start. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's not gonna be. Why would you have that expectation of like, I'm brand new at this and I have to be perfect? Is that reasonable? Is that appropriate? Would you expect that from your children? So, just a few things to ponder this morning. If you want the results, you have to put the time in. And if you're putting the time in and not getting where you want, you probably need to spend some time with somebody who's done it better than you have. Happy Monday!